Hello, everyone. Welcome to February 4th, the first Call of Duty slate of the year on the new Call of Duty Vanguard game. Um, Today, I'm going to try to introduce you guys a little bit to DFS Call of Duty, at least on the Draftkings aspect, and talk about the slate a little bit. Hopefully, if I remember, we might talk about like the teams and as a whole and the league as a whole. But if you guys do not know Call of Duty, I mean, I'm sure you guys probably know Call of Duty at least a little bit by playing it. It's been one of the most popular games ever. So hopefully, I'm gonna talk about this like you guys know Call of Duty, and you know DFS, but you don't know Call of Duty DFS. So if you guys are lost a little bit, I will answer some questions in the comments. But hopefully, I can explain things clearly and make sense. So I played Call of Duty DFS like all of last year, pretty much every slate I was a part of. We had some decent success. This is actually one of the games that me and my small group of friends focus on a good amount, and we had some good success overall. As a group. So hopefully we can continue to learn and apply these things to this year, and some of the things we learned. So basics of scoring: you get 2 points for a kill, minus 1 point for a death. I believe it's 3 game modes. Yeah, there's 3 game modes. I couldn't remember if they ended up getting a third game mode in, but they did. So there's 3 game modes. The first game mode is Hardpoint. There's a rotating spot around the map, and the players need to stand inside the spot to accumulate points. I believe every 1 second is 1 point. You need 250 points to win the map, and then you should, then you win the map. I don't know why I struggle with that, but most of all these series should be best of 5s. The format goes Hardpoint, Search and Destroy. Search and Destroy is pretty much a small form CSGO, if you guys don't know that much. There's 1 team on attack, 4 players, 1 team on defense. The team on offense needs to either kill all the defenders or plant and explode the bomb, and the defense needs to either defuse the bomb after it's planted, or kill all 4 attackers. They swap sides after every round. In the Search and Destroy game, and there should be the first 6 rounds wins the Search and Destroy map, and then after Search and Destroy, there's the third map of Control, and this is probably the most basic one, I guess. It's pretty much a 1 team. It's a mix of the both, actually. There's a 1 team attacking and 1 team defending, except I should add, in Search and Destroy, there's no respawning in the round, so it's 4v4 for that round. If you die, you're out of that round. Then you respawn up next round. It's the same in Control. Except there's a life limit. Each team gets 30 lives, I believe, and if your lives run out, you lose the round. The attackers have 2 zones that they need to capture. I believe, I don't know the time, how long you need to stand in them, but it's a while. The more attackers in the zone, the faster it goes. And the defenders just pretty much need to keep you out of the zones. It's pretty simple. I believe there's 5 rounds in that, so the first to 3 rounds wins the control map. There's only 1 control, and then you go back to Hardpoint for the 4th map in the series, and then Search and Destroy to close out the series if it goes to a 5th game. For DFS purposes, all kills are the same, it doesn't matter. All deaths are the same, it doesn't matter. You get time for being in the hard point. I believe it's like a 1/10 of a point per second. So a minute in the hard point would be 6 points. I think. Well, that sounds right. I think. I don't know. My math is blanking me, but I believe that is. Yeah, that's correct. So a minute in the hard point, you get 6 points. It's actually pretty minuscule, although it does matter in some circumstances. This is something I like to use just kind of as a tool breaker or a secondary tool. The main thing is killing, kills and deaths, and then for players at least, those are like the only three statistics you can gain is kills, deaths, and capture time in hardpoint. So ideally, teams that do well in hardpoint and get those get capture time and get those kills and stuff. Typically there's a lot more kills in hardpoints. Certain destroyers, obviously, because of the limited lives, have lower kills and deaths overall. Like if you get a 10 kill search and destroy, that's really good. If you get a 10 kill hard point, that's abysmally bad. So a little context there. Like you're aiming for like, I don't know, 25, 30 kills ideally in like a hard point. And then in search and destroy, it just doesn't make that much of a difference. But, if you want like 10, maybe if you can get there. But even then, just kind of going positive is all you're looking for. The same for control is just like in between those, like a 20, 25 maybe for control, for aiming for kills. So keep that in mind. That for players, it's pretty much only just kills and deaths, although this hard point time can add up if you play, if it goes to a fourth map and you play the second hard point. There are some players who end up getting like minute 30, maybe 2 minutes in the hill or in the hard point. So that can add up to like, 12, 15 points, maybe like 20 points if you played both hard points. It can add up a good bit. But ideally what you want for the most part in Call of Duty is sweeps. The amount of points you get from sweeps is just a crazy amount. As you can see here, for the players, you get 20 for sweeping, you get 20 for not playing a hard point, and then you get 5 for not playing a search and destroy. So if your team wins 3-0, they get a bonus of 45 points. You get all 3 of these bonuses. If your player gets swept, if they lose 0-3, I mean, they're probably going to have a bad score anyway, but they will get the plus 25, but they don't get the sweep, obviously, because they were swept. So do keep that in mind, that sweeps are hugely important for scores. They're pretty much, if a team sweeps, you're probably going to need like 2 or 3 of them. It's very rare that a team sweeps, and they're not like very well scored. So teams with sweeping upside are pretty valuable. Although when you have close games, and then if sweeps aren't on the table per se, then it's a kind of a different beast. And, you kind of want to look more so at those things. So, then the team slot, there's not a lot to it, really. There's only one team slot. They're super cheap. It's kind of just sorted by Vegas odds. And essentially, you get the only thing that you really need for the team slot, again, is getting the sweep, because you get 10 points for winning a map, or for the match. You get 4 points for winning a map, so that'd be 12. And then if you get the sweep, that's a plus 5. For winning a round in search and destroy and control, you get half a point. Not that much, but they add up. The main thing here, the only like tangible thing you can use to differentiate the teams is the plants and bomb diffuses. There are just some teams who play more objective based in the search and destroy game mode. And another thing as well is, like 2 plants and diffuses, that's a pretty easy goal, and that's worth more than winning a game. So for the team slot, ideally you want teams who are going to be in a close series, maybe go to a 5th map, and that way you can get the second search and destroy, and that should be pretty valuable for your team slot. That's what I like to aim for, at least, and it seems to make sense to me, at least. I guess I didn't summarize the players. For the players, it's just you want more kills and deaths. I will show how you can find that information. There's very, very little information to go off of. There was a pre-season tournament, I guess, but the teams played like a series. Some of them played like a 3 series. Like there's very little to go off of, but we'll have something to go off of. So again, quick rundown. For the teams, you just need players who get more kills and deaths. And hardpoint capture time matters a little bit, but not a lot. It can be a decent tiebreaker if 2 players are close. And then you really need sweeps if possible. For teams, hopefully close series or sweeps, depending on, sweeps aren't going to be bad either. But close series that goes to a fifth map and hopefully gets the second search and destroy. That way you can rack up these bomb plants and diffuses. Those are what adds up to big team scores. So now that we're through scoring and have a basic understanding, I did want to use this Slate as an example. And so these were pictures that I took on the February 1st, when I first saw odds go up for these games. And I wanted to show this because I found it interesting how much the odds have changed over time. So when I took this on the 1st, you see London was a -170, Florida was +130, and currently they are a pick'em. Both of them are at +115. So that's pretty interesting. Boston has gone up a little bit from 275 to -275 to -280. Then on the other side, Seattle went from -185 to -200. So a lot of line movement here with London and Florida. It's a little interesting, but it kind of makes sense when you think about it. So the website I should have pulled up beforehand, had I not forgotten, is breakingpoint.gg. I'll try to link this in the description if I remember. But this is where you'll get like most of your player and team stats. Again, for Call of Duty Vanguard, that's this year. So this is where you can search for things like in this team stats page, you can see how they do well on the Hardpoints, Search and Destroy Control, for example. This is the team that won the preseason tournament, the Toronto Ultra. They were incredibly strong last year as well. They kept their team together as 4. So they're going to be a preseason favorite as well. They won the tournament. They look pretty good. I believe it doesn't show it on this way on here. I think I'll try to find it, but there's usually a Google Doc that shows how often teams plant and diffuse. It is a little hard to predict, but there is some predictability to it. Hopefully I can remember to talk about that stuff during the season. But at least for now, when there's very little data, for the team slot at least, you're kind of just picking names. The only thing is being correlated. That's pretty helpful. But as you could see, like the Toronto, they played 3 series. So they played their first round and then the semifinal and grand final. The Atlanta FaZe, the other probably like top team. This is the most dominant team last year. They only played 1 series and it was because they lost. Boston, I believe they had 1 series and they lost. Florida played a couple, I believe. So we don't have much information to go off of. Like London got 0-3. Like there's not a lot to go off of here for them as well. But on the player statistics page, they're actually this is from that tournament I was just referencing. So keep in mind this sample size is extremely low. But we have Florida and London. So I'll add them. We have, what is it? It was LAG Boston, and then we have New York Seattle Surge. So this is our slate right here. As you could see, Awakening on the Florida side. He's pretty cheap, 8,200. I guess we could look at the pricing overall. It's pretty similar to like CS:GO. The top end is about 10,000. The low end is down here about 6. It's for the kickoff slate. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be weird. There is some interesting things to remember. So for Call of Duty, there's a new game every year, right? I mean, it's pretty similar. They're playing the same game modes as they did last year, but it's different maps, different guns, different engine that they're playing the game on. Like there's a lot of difference still. So keep that in mind, that the names that were good last year aren't necessarily going to be good names this year. Like there's definitely going to be a lot of crossover. Like good players tend to be good players as well. But don't be surprised if some good players from last year end up being worse and vice versa. So we don't want to put a ton of stock into team names. And the reason I say this is because you look over at the second series, Boston versus LA. Boston is a gigantic favorite. But if you were to look at the names, you'd be surprised. Like Hook, Slasher, Asim, and Gunless, they were all like decent players in the league last year. Methods, Caspidal, and Narrow, I don't even think they played in the league last year. So if you were to look solely off of names, you would see that LAG should definitely be like a better team here. But so far this year, Boston have been looking pretty good. LAG have not been looking good. So keep that in mind, that the name value is not going to match necessarily from last year. That's mainly what my point was. The same for Seattle versus New York. If you guys played Call of Duty DFS last year, you would know that Seattle was like borderline like a laughingstock of the Call of Duty league, called the CDL for short. And now they're actually looking pretty good as well. We on the New York side, they still have Crimsix, Clayster, Hydra, and Neptune. So, good players from last year as well. And then on the Seattle side, you have like Mac and Accuracy, who are like lower end to middling players. And then Sib and Pred, who are just like top academy, like top amateur prospects, I guess you could say. So again, if you look at name value from last year compared to this year, you would think New York should be like the better team, but so far they just have not looked that way. Although I do like the New York players. It's kind of hard to argue with the price here for the series on Bovada. So keep that in mind just in case you guys played last year. But if all these names are new to you, then it won't matter. But that's just a point that I wanted to make, is that some of the names from last year are probably going to be too heavily owned, I think. So that's probably going to be my approach early on this year, is try to use some of the new names, people that DFS people aren't comfortable putting their money on per se. So that's going to be my approach for this early slate. As you guys remember from what I just saw, this London versus Florida game, London was a gigantic favorite, and then lines ripped towards Florida all the way to a pick'em. Again, it makes sense. We can bring up the team stats. Again, not a lot of data to go off of here. So we have the Florida Mutineers here, and they played against LAG in Toronto. Losing Toronto, not a big deal. Beating LAG is fine. And then, of course, we have the London Royal Ravens. So, and the only thing we have to go off of for London is that they got 0-3 by Seattle. Again, not a lot to go off of. So it's understandable why the lines would rip towards Florida this way. Skies and Awakening are two great players. We know on the London side they have a full British roster. I believe they're playing from Texas, so there's no worry about the online environment here. But Afro was a rising star at the end of last year, so hopefully we can continue to kind of see that improve, and he can continue to grow that way as well. Looking at how they individually performed early on, we can clear it out and then put on London and Florida. So we have Awakening at the top, Afro up there as well, Skies up there, and then Dave Patty, Gizmo, Vivid, Nasty, they're all like around there. Dave Patty's kind of up in this top 4 tier. Gizmo, Vivid, Nasty, and Zero were pretty far down there. So probably Xing out Zero right away. Low performance in the beginning, but such a small sample, it's hard to argue really. I think Florida is going to be extremely popular because they're recognizable. 2, they were good last year, and 3, they're cheap compared to their odds. Like a pick'em, it's a pick'em, and then you have like Skies and Awakening being relatively cheap for their performance. I don't think somebody like Dave Patty's that bad either. He's 6K, super cheap, one of the cheapest players, if not the cheapest player on the game. He had put up decent stats here in the series that they played. I don't mind going to Afro at 9.2. I think he's like their best player. Puts up good numbers. So this is a tough one to pick. It's kind of hard to argue with what the value of Florida brings, especially if you were to go with like Skies Awakening, Dave Patty. Well, that's something I should talk about beforehand, is roster construction. So typically it's pretty unsolved for what or for what Call of Duty's best roster construction is. In my experience, going with like a 2-2-2 So you have like two players, and then one player, one like team slot. I guess ideally you should probably just think of the team slot like kind of independently. Although your team slot should match your players because you're playing your players under the assumption they win. So that's pretty much all you need. You can play a max of 3 players per team. So if you wanted to, you could go with like Dave Patty, Sky's Awakening, and then I don't know. We'll just use Boston for example, and then you go with like Methods, TJ Halley, and then you go Boston Breach. Like this is a good start like lineup. Just for example's sake, this is a good lineup. It has players from the same team, all that stuff. The team matching your player slot, so you have the corollary stuff that way, and that kind of stuff is looking good. And then if you want to break it down a little bit more, you could do like 2-2-2s, for example. Like maybe you just you don't want to go down to Dave Petty, you go with like Awakening Skies. And then on Boston, you go with like Caspital Nero. I don't know we'll talk about players in a little bit, but just for example, and then we go with something random like this. So like a 2-2-2 like this, although like the team slot could be anything. So 2-3-1 technically, but I feel like the team slot is kind of independent of the players. All you really need is to make sure your team slot matches your player slot, and then the players, you can have a max of 3 from a team. So for this slate, or for this first game, it's kind of tough. It feels like it's a good spot to use a team slot, again, as I alluded to earlier. Florida's a little underpriced. It'll be hard to get away from the Florida players. Sky's Awakening and Dave Patty seem pretty underpriced. I don't mind going there at all. That's probably where I'm going to end up leaning, although I don't mind Afro as well. The series I want to talk about some more is Boston LAG. So the reason I say this is because they both had pretty bad performances in the start. However, Boston is still looking very strong. I think people might get baited into looking at the LAG roster. Again, LAG all have recognizable names, and Boston kind of don't, at least down here, Caspital and Nero. You look at how they performed. You had Methods, Caspital, Nero up there, and then TJ Halley kind of below them. So Caspital and Nero seem a little underpriced, especially Caspital. I think playing like anyone from Boston is fine. Like I like going Caspital. Methods look pretty good. I don't think TJ Halley and Nero are bad. Again, we don't have much data to go off of, so I just like going on the Boston side. I'll probably be going Boston pretty heavy, again, because it's names that are either not loved or they're non-household names going against household names. So who knows? Maybe people will ride the Vegas odds heavily, and I'll be wrong on this. But I think Boston will be like a little underowned, maybe than they should be. Over on the Seattle, New York side, sorry guys, I need to go, so I'm going to speedrun this a little bit here. We have Sib Pred. So when you look, the lowest 2 Seattle players are the highest 2 on the scoreboard. You have Hydra, Mac up there as well. Again, maybe people will fall for the trap of the New York names. Crim6, Hydra, Clayster, Neptune, very good names in the Call of Duty scene. Just haven't put it all together necessarily in this game. And we've liked what we've seen from Seattle overall winning. So Seattle names are pretty good. Again, Sib, Pred, Mac up there. Accuracy seems a little overpriced, but not a bad play either. So I'm kind of riding with favorites here, but it feels like it's kind of playing favorites who are also will be contrarian somewhat. I'm not sure how ownership will break down. I'm not that good at ownership. I'm not going to pretend I am, but I like going with these cheaper Seattle guys. Sib and Pred seem underpriced. Caspital seemed underpriced, and pairing up with one of the top Boston guys. Maybe you want to just do a one-off of this Florida-London game. Like maybe you want to do Skies or Awakening or Afro. Just because, those are quality names. But it will be a close series, so I'm not sure, how the scores will break down. I think Florida typically had some pretty good DFS scores last year. So maybe you do want to go with the Skies and Awakening pairing there. So it's looking pretty good. I think this will be an interesting starting slate. COD DFS is actually a lot of fun to watch live when you have the money on it. The Call of Duty game isn't that good this year, but again, I think it's a pretty good product to watch, and it's pretty fun watching. It's so easy to tell the score live because it's just your kills are 2, your deaths are 1 minus 1. So it's easy to just say like, oh, I have 20 kills, 15 deaths. That means I'm 40 minus 15. My player's at 25 points. You could tell that right away. So typically you want over 100. I'd say that's the kind of the goal. 100 is a decent score. If you get 100 from your players, you're chilling. 130 is about the ceiling, so that's kind of the range between 100 and 130 is what you're aiming for from a player score. So keep that in mind, and best of luck to you guys. I know I couldn't talk as much as I wanted to. I'll try to maybe after week 1, I'll try to make a more slate or more league breakdown oriented thing. But unfortunately, I'm kind of pressed for time today, so that's going to be it for me today. Best of luck to you guys with the Call of Duty slate tomorrow, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. I believe there's another slate tomorrow, so I'll see you guys then.